Well, I think what's really important is that we get an association between the patients and their families, the physicians, the investigators, and then people that can help with the development of drugs and therapeutics and bring them to the marketplace. And so without the patients and without the patient buy-in and without patient registries, this whole process can't begin. The whole purpose for everything that we do is to find a way to help diagnose and ultimately treat the patients. So by starting a patient advocacy group here in Canada, you are actually beginning the most important part of the process. So this is why we should be here, and that's why we are here. Well, this is always a challenge because first we have to educate the general public and also the medical community as to exactly what this kind of disease process is. This is very different from the way most physicians and health practitioners are trained. The way Western medicine looks at disease is primarily from the perspective of anatomy. So people are trained to be anatomical specialists. Yet, in fact, diseases of energy metabolism are systemic diseases that affect organs that have the highest energy demand, like the brain, the eye, the kidney, the renal, the heart, the muscle. And so these patients have often multiple clinical problems with different organs. And this is very, very befuddling to the current clinical practitioner philosophy, which is if you have a headache, you go to see the neurologist and you treat your head. But if in fact you could have a systemic defect that causes a headache, then you're really not actually addressing the problem. So what we really have to do is develop a whole new approach to medical education, to outreach to the physicians and to the hospitals. We have to develop new kinds of departments. We need new funding agencies and structures, all of which are reorienting the way we look at the disease from the anatomical approach to this much more holistic and more general approach. I am very, very excited about the Mito of Canada program. I've been involved with the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation since its inception. I started working on mitochondria in 1970-71, and the reason I did is I was very interested in addressing clinical problems. And having a physics background, it occurred to me that it was really odd that medicine was studying a lot of anatomy, but nobody was studying what animates people. And what's most interesting about being alive is that you're animated, and that would require energy. So it occurred to me that somebody ought to study the role of energy in health. And then, of course, we discovered that the mitochondria had its own DNA, and then the idea would be the DNA could mutate and give disease. That idea, even though we started working on this now almost 50 years ago, is still a very, very unusual concept from the way the medical community looks at things. So organizations like Mito Canada are critical in beginning to raise people's understanding and awareness that we're missing half of the medical problem. That is, by continually studying things anatomically, we're missing all of the energetic component of all these disease processes. So being here and the inception of Mito Canada, this is critical for the development of the whole field, because these are the very ideas, the very people, the very organizations that's going to transform medicine. You're probably aware that a lot of common diseases are rising in frequency, like diabetes, obesity, autism, and as the population ages, all the age-related diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, etc. So we have a major clinical crisis confronting all healthcare systems. If we don't figure out what's going on here and intervene to decrease the frequency of these diseases, no tax structure can possibly deal with that. And many, many people are going to have very, very degraded quality of lives. The standard approaches have not made a dent on that. We've put lots of money into understanding the anatomy of disease. We've put a lot of money into, quote, sequencing the nuclear genome, and we have made very, very little progress. So it's time for a change of idea, a change of attitude. And the other obvious alternative is if anatomy is not the problem, energy could be. So having something like MitoNet of Canada to begin to raise awareness, to say, wait a minute, it's time to change our course, that this particular road isn't taking us where we need to go. Maybe it's time for a right turn. That I think is critical, and as soon as I was invited, I wanted to be here. This was just like what we had 20 years ago when we started United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. There is a huge reservoir of patients in great need, and they're disenfranchised by the medical community. They go from subspecialty to subspecialty, they have huge charts, and they never get a diagnosis, and they never get an effective treatment because we're looking at it the wrong way. And MitoNet Canada is a critical first start in raising awareness, both in the community and the physicians, but also in government, to move forward in a new direction that's going to be much more productive than what we've been doing up till now.